The Old West encompassed more than cowboys, saloons, and shootouts. Pioneers on the American frontier heavily relied on medical assistance. Epidemics, accidents, and STDs kept doctors occupied, yet most lacked proper medical degrees. In the Wild West, imposters abounded, promoting questionable remedies like sulfur consumption and leech application. The frontier proved perilous. Rich Bar, California, a bustling gold rush town, hosted 29 doctors in constant turmoil. One doctor's wife documented, "In 24 days, we've witnessed numerous killings, harrowing mishaps, deaths, lashings, and a fatal duel." Medical solutions sometimes proved riskier than the illnesses. Mercury compounds led to teeth loss, surgeries lacked anesthesia, and jugular bleeding was endorsed. Hence, some pioneers branded frontier doctors as agents of darkness. Remember to hit the like button because it helps us a lot. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the notification bell to not miss the upcoming interesting video. Untrained frontier doctors performed experimental procedures. It was common for doctors in the Wild West to practice medicine without a formal degree, and some doctors had no formal training at all. The shortage of medical professionals on the frontier made it possible for self-taught healers to practice cutting-edge medicine. For example, in 1827, a former janitor performed the first successful cesarean section in the West. John Richmond worked as a janitor at a medical school where he listened in on lectures. He called himself a doctor and performed a C-section without ever seeing one before. Richmond wrote, "Finding that whatever was done must be done soon, and feeling a deep and solemn sense of my responsibility, with only a case of common pocket instruments, about 1 o'clock at night I commenced the cesarean section. The patient never complained of pain during the whole course of the cure." Successful is a relative term in this case, and Richmond's account of the procedure has been debated. While the mother survived the procedure, the child did not, and author Jacqueline Wolfe wrote that the patient begged Richmond to stop over the pain in Wolfe's book Cesarean Section, An American History of Risk, Technology, and Consequence. Bleed, blister, and purge was the mantra of many early pioneer doctors. Even trained doctors relied on dangerous treatments in the 19th century. Dr. Daniel Drake, a founder of Ohio's first medical college, strongly advised bleeding for patients whose pulse is nearly imperceptible. If the doctor's lancet couldn't induce blood flow from a vein, Dr. Drake recommended cutting the jugular. Blister treatments involved peeling off patients' skin to rub on irritants. Some doctors even wrapped cotton around their patient's skin to burn it away, an intensely painful treatment. Most of the treatments patients received from their doctors were narcotics or purgatives. Frontier treatments were sometimes more dangerous than the disease. Doctors treated many conditions with purgatives, meant to clean out the patient's system. They commonly administered massive doses of ipecac to induce vomiting. Even worse was calomel, a mercury compound so strong that it weakened patients' gums and caused their teeth to fall out. By the 1840s, frontier doctors began administering quinine, an effective and safe substance. However, it remained extremely expensive. A single ounce of quinine could cost more than a fattened cow. Superstitious people sometimes accused doctors of doing the work of the devil. Doctors conducted autopsies, declared notorious outlaws expired after shootouts, and sometimes had to perform unorthodox surgeries to save patients' lives. One frontier doctor wrote, "I slit the throat of the child choking with diphtheria, opening the windpipe and kept it open with fishhooks." Superstitious people sometimes believed doctors were performing the devil's work. In one case, a doctor performed an operation on a Sunday morning. His patient, who suffered from a large ovarian tumor, underwent surgery without the benefit of anesthetics. A crowd gathered outside of the doctor's office, declaring that the doctor was butchering a woman inside. The superstitious mob didn't stop the surgeon. His patient survived a 25-minute procedure which removed a 22-pound tumor from her abdomen. Doctors fought to the end over their territory. Doctors' offices looked different on the frontier. In boom towns, doctors set up their offices wherever they could. Dr. George Goodfellow set up his first office in the Golden Eagle Brewing Company in Tombstone. After a fire burned down the building, Dr. Goodfellow moved his office to the Crystal Palace Saloon, the same building that housed the office of U.S. Deputy Marshal Virgil Earp. Frontier doctors were sometimes protective of their territory. When Dr. Edward Willis moved to Hangtown, the town's only other doctor, who had no medical training, challenged Dr. Willis to a duel. The risky move didn't pay off for the untrained doctor, who ended up losing the duel and his life. Doctors without institutional training embraced different and sometimes wild theories of medicine. Anyone could hang a shingle and call themselves a doctor on the frontier. As a result, untrained doctors might promote strange treatments that were often harmful. Doctors might prescribe secret Native American herbs or strange diets to treat all kinds of medical conditions. Others promoted baths as a cure-all. Many advised removing bad blood from sick patients, often through bleeding or leeches. Many pioneers believed the most effective medicines were the most disgusting tasting. As a result, some doctors recommended drinking sulfur to treat illnesses. Many patients feared doctors almost as much as they feared illness and disease. Visiting a doctor might spell your end in the Wild West. Consider, for example, one doctor's treatment for malaria. Carry then your patient into the passage between the two cabins. Strip off all his clothes that he may lie in the cold air and upon a bare sacking, and then and there pour over and upon him successive buckets of cold spring water, and continue until he has a decided and pretty powerful smart chance of a shake. If the patient's tremors grew too large, the doctor administered opium. Another doctor recommended bleeding patients from the jugular, which almost certainly had a high mortality rate. Women worked as doctors on the frontiers. It turns out Dr. Quinn wasn't the only medicine woman in the West. In reality, the Old West really did provide new opportunities for women. In 1880, Dr. Bethenia Owens Adair earned her MD from the University of Michigan's medical school. She moved to Oregon, where she practiced medicine in Portland and Astoria. As Dr. Owens Adair described, practicing medicine in the West was a major challenge. I carried on my professional work as best I could in that out-of-the-way place, and at no time did I ever refuse a call, day or night, rain or shine. I was often compelled to go on foot, through trails so overhung with dense undergrowth and obstructed with logs and roots that a horse and rider could not get past, and through muddy and flooded tidelands in gumboots. Until the 1860s, few frontier doctors had professional degrees. Most doctors in the West didn't hold a medical degree. In 1880, Tombstone boasted a population of 2,000, with 12 doctors to care for the residents. However, 8 of the doctors didn't have a medical license. In fact, until at least the 1860s, most frontier doctors had no formal medical knowledge or training. One scholar estimates that no more than 25% of frontier doctors completed medical school. As a result, medical treatments ranged from the latest medical advances to completely invented treatments. Doctors charged about 25 cents to $1 per visit, but most patients paid in goods or services. Doctors in the Wild West weren't bringing in high salaries. In the early 19th century, doctors typically charged 25, 50 cents for a visit. Longer visits, including overnight stays, might cost up to $1. However, many patients couldn't afford to pay doctors in cash. Instead, many paid in goods or services. Doctors also often received promises instead of cash. Stories say some doctors may have even offered a discount on medical services on house calls if their patients fed their horses. Many physicians also served as druggists, making their own medicines. Frontier doctors didn't just treat patients. They also often made and sold their own medicines. In some Old West towns, the physician also served as the druggist due to the lack of qualified professionals in the community. Drugstores often stocked leeches that doctors used to bleed patients. Druggists also mixed their own medicines from raw herbs, leaves, and roots. Doctors James Robinson and Ella Ford met in medical school. After they both earned their degrees in 1878, they moved to Jacksonville, Oregon, where they opened a drugstore along with their medical offices. Sadly, Ella passed in childbirth just a year after the couple set up their practice. Doctors often traveled long distances and through rough terrain to see their patients. Doctors traveled long distances to see patients. Scottish immigrant Dr. Forbes Barclay crossed Oregon and Washington to treat patients, traveling on horseback and sometimes hiring a Native American guide to take him by canoe. When doctors reached the scene of an accident, they often performed emergency surgery on the spot. One surgeon described operating on a patient lying on a whiskey barrel while the doctor sat on a tree stump. The surgeon used one hand to operate and waved off flies with the other. Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.